Okay, so let's now summarize and tie up some of what we learned in the previous Go China session. So let's tie it all together. So one of the major components of China's cybersecurity law compliance is data storage and transmission requirements. So to help with those requirements, we have a variety of different products. You can see the mapping between the technology on the left and the CSL compliance requirement on the right. For instance, store data locally in China, keep logs for 6 months, and encrypt data at rest. This maps onto database backup service, hybrid backup and recovery, and log service. Whereas store data locally in China and migrate data on Chinese customers to China could be covered by Cloud Enterprise Network, VPN Gateway, and our data transmission service, which is a database migration service. I'll just leave this slide up for a moment so that you have a chance to digest it and think about it. Essentially, we're just developing a one-to-many or many-to-one mapping between our Alibaba Cloud products and services and compliance requirements under the cybersecurity law. For security and monitoring, again, there's a pretty clear mapping. Cloud Firewall and Security Center help with monitoring and assessing threats, preventing data theft or loss, preventing defacement of sites, and logging network traffic, whereas Content Moderation and Web Application Firewall primarily help with moderating publicly accessible content, preventing defacement of sites, and preventing data theft or loss. For data storage and transmission, again, there's a pretty clear mapping: log service, hybrid backup and recovery, database backup service. These helps with the requirements to store local data and encrypt data at rest. And the Cloud Enterprise Network, VPN Gateway, and data transmission service help again with migrating data into China if needed and keeping data on Chinese customers in China, since you can use Cloud Enterprise Network and VPN Gateway to perform migrations. So what might some various forays into the Chinese market look like? Well, this would be a typical Go China journey. You'd start out with a very lean operation that has no office. You'd eventually move up to being partially committed. You'd have an office and perhaps some local staff. Then you have a fully committed operation where you have a local Chinese entity and a full office. And then you're an all-in player, which is where you begin to think in a local native Chinese way. That's the natural progression of any Go China journey. You start out lean with no office, and you end up, hopefully, if things go well, as an all-in native player, taking full advantage of the Chinese ecosystem of apps and services, and localizing your message for the local market. So a lean operation might look something like this. You want to start your business in China by starting out with a mobile application or a very simple website. In this case, you can get help from a partner to apply for ICP, and your primary issue will be overcoming network stability issues, so you'll want to look at something like CEN or maybe our Global Acceleration Service, which is also designed to accelerate overseas applications for users in China. So at that point, it's just a local partner plus some type of network acceleration tool. Your site or application is still hosted outside China. Scenario 2, if you're moving up to being a partially committed operation, now you're going to have some people based in China, so you need some type of a cross-border solution so that you can administer and manage resources that are deployed inside mainland China. So now, in addition to potentially needing some type of an acceleration solution, you also need something like CEN, like Cloud Enterprise Network, to help interconnect Alibaba Cloud resources in different regions, say maybe the China office in Shanghai and the US office in New York. So you can connect those with CEN. Scenario 3, this is a fully committed operation. So this is where you're fully engaged in the Chinese market. You now have a consumer-oriented service that's running on servers in China, but it's still a cross-border business. Some of your internal systems might be hosted outside of China, and your employees in China will need to access those. So now you're looking at CEN, Cloud Enterprise Network, again for your internal network needs, but also you're going to need to have an ICP certificate or license so that you can publish a public web-facing service in China, and you're going to need something like CDN to accelerate that site for users all around the country. Once you're a China native operation, it's time to consider scaling up and integrating with other Chinese services. And that could mean Alibaba services like Tmall or Taobao or Alipay for payments, but it could also mean services like Sina Weibo, like Chinese blogging services, or even Tencent's WeChat, which is a very popular chat tool here that's used for a lot of marketing and customer outreach and data collection. So you'd want to look at integrating with the rest of the ecosystem, and you'll also need to consider ways to compete with local competition. So you really need to have services in place to handle things like the logistics of package delivery. If your application needs mapping functions, you should have a mapping service like Gauda Maps. So you really want to be considering the Alibaba ecosystem as a whole, and also looking into other important Chinese businesses that are in this online space and integrating those into your operation in China. That's all for the Go China or China Connect portion of the course. In the next section, we'll take a look at some ACA and ACP example questions. See you there.